Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for day number 8 of my 31 Days of Horror. This is where I'm watching and reviewing 31 different horror movies over 31 days, all through the month of October till I get to Halloween. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the series so far if you have been following along, and if you're watching the movies and following along with the lineup that I posted, hopefully you guys are enjoying the movies also. Today's movie is one from the year 2019. It's a movie I had seen once before, but it probably was way back in 2019 or possibly 2020, somewhere around that time. So it's been a little while since I last checked it out. But either way, the movie is titled The Prodigy, and like I said, from the year 2019. Before I get into my thoughts of The Prodigy, let's quickly get into the plot of it. So in this movie, we follow 8-year-old Miles, who, from the title, is a child prodigy, just super fucking smart, way ahead of everyone else, sort of at his age. He's just super clever. And, we get a montage at the start of the movie with his parents realizing that he's a little bit more gifted than other kids his age. And I guess the parents in this movie are just standard everyday parents, what you would typically expect. They're not super gifted with intelligence like Miles is. So throughout the early parts of this movie, it's just them trying to navigate what life is with an 8-year-old son who is insanely intelligent, But at a certain point in this movie, Miles' behavior starts to change and I guess have a darker turn. And there's a reveal at about the halfway mark in this movie. And I guess if you're going into this movie blind, this could be a spoiler. It's very much suggested early on in the film, so if you're switched on, you should be able to connect the dots before the reveal actually happens. But I guess this is a spoiler warning technically, but I do have to bring it up to get into what I like and dislike about this movie when I get into my thoughts. But there's a reveal at about the halfway mark that another human soul is living in Miles' body through reincarnation. So now the mother, who is essentially the lead in this film, has to figure out how to get this human soul out of Miles' body and save her son from, these dark paths that he's going down. And yeah, that's essentially the plot that we have for The Prodigy. Let's get into my thoughts of it now. So like I said there in my intro, that reveal that we get at the halfway mark technically is a spoiler if you're going into this movie completely blind and you haven't connected the dots up until this point. So sorry that I had to give a spoiler away in the intro, especially since I don't like giving spoilers away at all through any of my horror reviews. But like I said, I had to go into it to bring up some talking points and topics that I want to bring up with this review. But like I said, if you are following along within the first 5-10 minutes of this movie, you already should understand that we're dealing with reincarnation, and that is eventually going to be the reveal in this movie. Like the first time I saw this movie, like I said, roughly back in 2019, 2020, in the first 5-10 minutes, I went into the movie blind as well and went, okay, that's what we're dealing with here, and that's going to be the reveal with Miles. So I don't think it's a massive spoiler, but again, sorry that I had to go into that in the plot description. But moving on and getting into my proper thoughts, the reincarnation, it's not something that's never been done before in horror, but I do think it's underused, and I think it's a cool idea, and I think it's an idea with lots of potential, especially within horror, because the idea of reincarnation, I know a lot of people are pretty understanding of it, and they think, oh, okay, it's pretty cool, but I think deep down it is actually kind of creepy. With reincarnation, there's a lot I feel can be explored and places you can take it, but I feel like with this movie here, it's a lot of missed opportunities. It does a lot of things that I think you could consider to be safe, as in it doesn't take any major twists or turns, or it goes too outside of what you would kind of expect with a movie like this. I just feel like it doesn't really make the most of the idea of a movie where your child has a reincarnated serial killer living inside of his body. I feel like there's a lot of missed potential there. I feel like overall it's kind of a movie of moments. There's some moments where I really sat up again and I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. And it would grab me with moments of some creepy shit going down, or honestly, there's a few actual good jump scares in this movie, which surprised me. I didn't remember there being so many jump scares that were actually effective, but they were good. Honestly, some good moments of gore and brutality as well. So there are specific moments in this movie that really grabbed my attention again, but then other times it does kind of slow down and isn't as impactful as I feel like a movie like this again could be. Like I said, the moments in this one just sort of waver in and out. This movie is like perfectly fine. Like it's not offensively bad. It's not reinventing the wheel either. I feel like it can grab your attention for its runtime and hold it there well enough. I actually still feel like this movie is kind of underrated, especially when it comes to the killer kid subgenre. There's a lot of movies still coming out now that deal with killer kids and whatever, but I feel like the Prodigy sort of just came and went. It did have a little bit of murmurs around it when it first came out, but it's not really one I hear a lot of people mentioning still. Surprised they never did a sequel to this movie, especially considering how this movie ends. But then again, like I said, this movie I feel like is pretty underrated and like I said, sort of just came and went, so maybe it wasn't too successful enough to warrant a sequel, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I would have checked it out for sure. Like I said, this movie's perfectly watchable. It's entertaining enough from start to finish. I just feel like for majority of it, it's just sort of playing it safe, playing it typical. There's a lot of missed opportunities and areas that they could have explored, especially with an idea like reincarnation. The kid in this movie, like straight away, I'm like, fuck, he's so familiar. Like, where do I know his face from? He plays Georgie in the It remake. So obviously he didn't have a massive part in the It remake, but definitely gets to put more of his acting chops forward in here, and he's perfectly fine for a child actor. I feel like the cast do a pretty solid job in this movie. Everything from a technical standpoint is solid enough. Like I said, this movie's perfectly watchable, entertaining. I just feel like there's a handful of missed opportunities and some more unique directions it could have went. But if I'm giving a rating to the Prodigy out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like, it's perfectly fine, watchable. It's not a waste of time. It's just not really one that I'm going to write home about. But I do think it's still kind of underrated, worth checking out. So there we go. That's my sort of quicker review today of The Prodigy. Just finished watching it this morning and went, fuck it, I'll walk upstairs now, do a review. Normally I let it sit for a little bit, but like I said, I just sort of gathered everything that I felt like I needed to say pretty quick because, like I said, the movie's not really throwing us through too many loops. As I said, it plays it sort of safe with what I think is a more unique concept and everything, but definitely worth a watch, especially if you are into killer kid movies and want to explore some horror that deals with reincarnation, because like I said, I feel like that's a topic in horror that isn't used enough, but still a cool enough movie. Thank you for joining me for day number 8 of my 31 Days of Horror, and I'll see you tomorrow for day number 9 for what will be my second first time watch of this year's 31 Days of Horror. See you guys.